Hey everybody, welcome to the Struggling Hunters. I'm Eric. Joe's on the other side.
Hey guys, how's it going?
We're here again for another episode. We're pretty excited. We've lasted 10 episodes. Man, it's been great. It's been a lot of fun doing these episodes, learning a lot about ourselves. We're young in this podcast game, and it's a ton of fun, but putting yourself out there really brings up a little bit of, you just try to be as good as you can or be as perfect as you can on making these, and you kind of catch all your own mistakes. But I feel like we've gotten a lot better since our first podcast, and it's been exciting. What's your takeaway on that, Joe, as far as episode 10?
So episode 10, it's kind of interesting to a degree, as far as thinking. So I know it's only 10 episodes, but thinking back to like episode 1 and being like, oh man, like 5 episodes, that's kind of crazy. And you start thinking, like, oh shoot, now we're at like 10 episodes. Is like, yeah, man, that's even crazier. Like, not just looking back at like that, comparing to myself to who. Thinking back and making more than just one episode, and now we're at 10. It's like, oh yeah, still got a long ways to go. Don't know that I'd ever get there, but I've come a long ways. I feel, as far as trying to not look too much like a deer in the headlights as I'm talking on here.
Yeah, definitely. I go through that all the time. I mean, every episode I'm like, oh, why did I say that? Oh, I missed that. It gives me a lot of respect for people that mess up in the media and say the wrong thing. It's really easy to be the armchair quarterback and shun them to death and tell them how bad they make a mistake. But we've made countless mistakes in 10 episodes. So, it kind of makes me a little more understanding toward people that kind of get a little clunky on the media. And, we're just doing this on Zoom to each other, and we're not even live, like on live TV or with stadium full of people and on
Right.
NBC after the game or something, so I mean, the pressure is not even as bad for us as it would be like, some professional athletes or whatnot. So yeah, I don't know. It's been a crazy ride, but we got over 10 hours, especially after this episode. We'll have over 10 hours of kind of figuring it all out and learning what to do. I mean, it's a crazy concept to think about.
Yeah, it is. It is kind of crazy. Like you're like, holy cow, that's a normal 8-hour workday plus 2. We're in overtime now, like we're overtime hours,
Yeah. What is it? They say that you got to have like 10,000 hours in something before you're considered a professional. And, so we still got a long ways to go is what I'm saying. And kind of transitioning a little bit here, I do feel like, we're still filling out this podcast and trying to figure out exactly where we're going, how to make the best content for the listeners. And, hopefully just the research that we've kind of looked at and stuff, most people are like, around episode 50 or around video 50, or that's whenever you kind of start figuring out your identity. So with that said, we got another 40 to go, but transitioning into that, the people that have listened to us so far and supported us, like, we can't thank you enough. I mean, you guys are the reason that we're obviously still going. And you guys are awesome. And every podcast we're getting more and more views, listens, and it's pretty exciting. I mean, it's just an exciting venture, and it's just exciting to get that support from you guys, and it really humbles us. We usually say this stuff kind of toward the end of the podcast, but because our podcasts usually ramble on for about an hour, I know a lot of people are like, okay, I had my fair share of them, and they get off a little early or whatnot. So with that in mind, we just kind of wanted to really start out the podcast today with kind of mentioning the people that are supporting us and giving and helping us create this platform and helping it grow. We really appreciate everything that you guys have done. And
yeah, like, you know, it's been fun being the little fish as we are right now in the big pond of YouTube, you know, like in the ocean of YouTube. You know, it's kind of humbling and when you look at it that way, but at the same time, you know, you pull it back into two little struggling hunter dudes trying to better themselves out in the woods and trying to become better at, you know, better hunters, better woodsmen. And you guys are, I'm thinking, wanting to do the same thing. Hopefully, you know, we're talking some of our topics are your struggles too, or, you know, like maybe you haven't felt that yet, but yet you have felt it in a way of a struggle you've had and can relate to us somehow. And hopefully we can share some of that too and be, you know, we have shared some of that, and, you know, hopefully that gets your interest or whatnot. But yeah, so it's been fun swimming around this big pond.
yeah, it has. And I mean, I think Joe and I have already said it, but I mean, it's just we just really appreciate you guys and really appreciate the support that you guys have given us so far. So keep it up. You guys are our OGs and, you know, hopefully down the road, you know, we'll make better podcasts. But you guys will always be our OGs. So we really appreciate you is what I'm getting at.
What's that, old geezers?
Old geezers, exactly. Old geezers. Oh, I like the little fish in the big pond too.
Yeah, I try to come up with some deep, poignant, you know, real thought out analogies that, you know, really make you think and want to better yourself.
Oh man, you're a modern day philosopher.
I think so.
No, I know so. I'm witnessing it. It's getting recorded right now.
Right.
All right. Well, so yeah, thank you guys for listening. So we're gonna transition. This is kind of a fan question / that's a fact, Jack. One of the guys that are listening, I know you're probably watching right now. So thank you, Mike, for giving the question out to us. I did a little bit of research. The question is can you eat rabbits / or hares in summertime? The theory is that they're riddled with disease and bugs. So I did a little bit of research. One of my source was the Meat Eaters with Steve Ranella and those guys. They had a great little article about this. I was surprised that I found it as easy as I did. I thought I was going to have to do a little more research, but they kind of did the research for me. So to start it all off, can you eat rabbits in the summertime? Basically, you can. It's totally fine unless you ingest uncooked rabbit guts that have parasites. You know, if it was uncooked, obviously you could get sick that way if the rabbit had some parasites. Also, so I think this is where most people get a little freaked out about eating the rabbits, is whenever they see this is botflies can lay eggs on rabbit hide. The larvae hatch and burrow under the skin. You know, like there's little bumps under the skin, and they're not harmful to humans as long as you cook it all the way through. But you can cut them out, and then obviously if you cook your food or whatever, they'll die, and they'll pose no threat. But it can look pretty unsightly whenever you see that, whenever you're skinning the rabbit and you see the larvae in there, creating some bumps. The
So
one thing, go ahead.
Like I say, in a way, you're getting like 2 meats for the price of one there. You got your larva and
Yeah, there you go.
your rabbit.
That's hardcore. The one thing is ticks and flies, right? Or fleas, sorry, not flies. Ticks and fleas can be harmful. There's this disease called tularemia, and it can be transmitted to humans. The thing with fleas and ticks, though, is it poses no more threat to the summertime because rabbits are riddled with, or can be riddled with, ticks and fleas throughout the whole year. So it's not more harmful if they happen to have that tularemia disease. Does that make sense? Am I saying, is that?
Yeah, I think so.
You think so? So, but one way you can make sure that they're not diseased by tick is if you look at their liver, there'll be little white spots all over their liver if they're diseased by the tularemia disease. And if their liver has little white spots on it, you basically discard the rabbit at that point. But if that's fine and you want to do the process of taking out the larva from the bot flies, peel those out, cook them out. I mean, basically, long story short, you can eat rabbits in the summertime with no problems. You just got to kind of inspect your game whenever you're gutting them out and make sure you're not eating anything too bad. But the answer to the question is you can eat rabbits all year round. And so that's partially a fact, Jack, and a fan question. So kind of hit two birds with one stone there.
And I just want to add there, though, to make sure that if you are hunting rabbits or whatnot, that you're find out there's a season for them or not. You don't want to be out poaching rabbits. Because here in Utah, I know there's, for some wild hares or snowshoe rabbits and stuff, pot guts, and there's an actual season where you're supposed to be hunting them. So that's one of the things too, is check your regulations, see if you're supposed to be in season to hunt them, or if they're not recognized and you can hunt them whenever you want. So just make sure you check yourself on that, so that way you don't get in trouble. And then, we're not. Yeah.
Yeah. Just make sure you can hunt them whenever you can. But if you do hunt them, if you can hunt them and it's open season in the middle of summer for them, you can eat them just as long as they don't have, just got to cook them all the way through and make sure that their liver isn't diseased. I got another buddy with me today. I got a fly in my studio.
Well, he must like you. You just draw people to you.
Man, I swear flies get drawn into this. So my studio is pretty fancy. It's in the high rise of my house on the ground floor in the shop. So that's my studio. But yeah, flies tend to get in here every once in a while, it seems like. So
maybe they just like struggling hunters and want to be right there with you.
That's true. They're always trying to take over the show, guest appearance. The funny thing is that, the pre-show, getting all set up, getting ready to do this, I don't hardly see them. And then I start talking, and then they start wanting to fly right in front of my face. The struggle is real. There's no Hollywood magic here. We just roll on. There's no editing, nothing. A little bit of editing sometimes if we really mess up. We've only had to edit one show, talking about shows. We only had to edit one show, and that was just because it was
quite choppy. We kept, probably my fault. I was using my phone to talk on Skype, and it kept cutting out and digitizing robotics and stuff. So we had to go back through and splice it together, or Eric did.
Yeah. But it still turned out pretty good. It was pretty good. It came out a lot better than I thought. So than I thought it would. And you guys probably weren't none the wiser. You guys probably actually thought, man, these guys sound really good this time. It was because we actually edited all the mistakes out, or most of the mistakes out. So moving on, we did our That's a Fact, Jack. Thanks, Mike, for that question, by the way. Moving on. So Joe and I, last podcast, we realized that we're a little rough on our history. And through that, we kind of wanted to learn a little more about our history and conservation. And also the idea was that there was a lot of stuff that we didn't know about Boone and Crocket. We didn't really know anything about Boone and Crocket except that they what's that?
I thought we did.
Well, yeah, we thought we did. And here's the thing, though, is I feel like a lot of other people probably feel the same way. But, you know, just everybody thinks it's an animal measuring company that, you know, you get if you have a big enough animal, whatever it is, from deer to bear. You know, if your animal's big enough, you'll get in the books, the record books, and there it lies. But through our research, we were just kind of wanting to understand what Boone and Crocket was all about. I was actually really surprised what we found out, and so we thought that it would be nice to share that with you guys. Some of you guys are probably going to be like, "Yeah, we know, guys. You know, we're the smartest people in the world." But some of you probably don't know about Boone and Crocket. So with that said, today we're going to kick that off. Do you want to kick off a few things first, Joe? I've been kind of rambling on for a while.
Sure. So one of the things I thought was kind of interesting is, you know, we totally put our foot in our mouth last week about, you know, talking about Teddy Roosevelt, not knowing much, you know, knowing some on him, but not knowing everything. And, you know, he was quite the kind of the dude, the guy, you know, back in the day, especially becoming a president and doing what he did. And then, you know, setting aside so much land to be used for the public, that flowed good. But, you know, so that being said, so continue on with Teddy Roosevelt, or Theodore Roosevelt. He was the one of the, I guess, founding fathers for the Boone and Crocket Club. So like Eric was saying, you know, my whole life being the hunter that I am. Now that being said, I'm just a guy that loves to hunt, you know, read stories about hunting. And me being as naive as I am, I thought that Boone and Crocket was, like Eric said, was this list of hunters that have killed big game animals. But come to find out through some fact checking is, you know, they started, so Boone and Crocket started to, they formed in order to start a group of people to start, you know, the conservation movement to keep lands for us. And then they wanted, so their idea was that if an area has the water, the food sources, you know, everything it needs, the vegetation, that it's going to produce trophy animals, or animals will be healthy. So they started the Boone and Crocket Club to monitor what type of animals were being pulled out of the area. And, you know, so in short term, you know, people think, oh, I'm guilty of it myself, is, oh, it's just this club that you get to join when you got a game animal that meets the big game requirements. You know, you get your name in a book. But in reality, that I didn't know, was the fact that it was more for keeping records of what was coming out of an area, to see if that area was thriving, you know, as far as antler growth, or, you know, like bears and stuff, cougars, that's and cats, it's more of a skull measurement. But that's their theory, was that, they find out the growth of antlers and skulls, that they'll know how healthy of the ecosystem is in that particular area. So I thought that was kind of interesting, and brought me to realize how naive I was in thinking that it was just a grab and grins type of club. That no, there's more to it. They're actually trying to figure out how well an area is doing.
Yeah, very well said as far as I'm considered. Yeah, it's pretty neat what they started. I mean, Boone and Crocket is really responsible for. So I always knew that Theodore Roosevelt was responsible for conservation and bringing back herds and animals, but somewhere in there, Boone and Crocket kind of got pushed to the side. And I heard about Theodore Roosevelt being responsible for conservation, but not really Boone and Crocket. But it was all through Boone and Crocket, the organization of Boone and Crocket. And I don't know if you said this earlier, but they were founded in 1887 is when they were founded. And another thing that they wanted to give light to was fair chase tactics. So instead of going out there and just annihilating game at will, they wanted to make sure that there was fair chase to it, and rules and regulations, basically your hunting regs. I don't know exactly when hunting regs started coming out. I mean, we haven't done that much research, and doing this podcast really opened our eyes to more of the responsibility of a hunter. We started this podcast talk about hunting, to have fun talking about hunting, and our excuse to talk about hunting gear and that kind of things, but those kind of things. But as we are digging deeper and deeper into this, we're looking at history, and of conservation, and now it's, almost wanting to be an activist for conservation and volunteer. And I mean, that's where doing this research, it got me, was like, man, I want to do more for conservation than just trying to get my elk every year. I thought that was enough, but there's more I could do. I could volunteer my time. I could get with one of these organizations like Boone and Crocket and volunteer some time over there. There's just more I could do as a fellow hunter myself. And this podcast has kind of brought light to that, which is exciting. We're so new at all this stuff, but it's kind of cool. I mean, it's just cool to learn more about our sport, more than what I even, here I am, a guy that's hunted pretty much all my life, and not realizing that there was so much more to be learned. And then through this podcast, I've been learning it.
So with that being said, what do you think and pops in my head, what do you think you've taken for granted as a hunter from just a little bit doing this and evidently we got a lot more to learn, but what have you taken for granted this far that your eyes have been opened up to this point,
Well, I think that's a great question, but pretty much what I said was just not doing more, reading more about conservation and the efforts, supporting the efforts. Right. I think it's pretty easy for us as regular Joes, no pun intended, to yeah. I think it's easy to argue the state for a decision that's made to maybe better conservation. Now, I think we all have a voice and we all should have our opinions, and later on down the road, I'm sure we might do a podcast or we might at least talk about it in a segment or something about wolves. I don't really want to share my opinion right now, but what I'm getting at is, well, I guess I am going to share my opinion. I feel like it was a mistake in Idaho whenever they did that. And as a hunter trying to bring this all back, as a hunter, a conservationist, you know, just expressing our opinion, talking amongst each other, you know, at the Friday night football game just isn't going to cut the mustard. I mean, you gotta get yourself involved. So that's a regret, right? Not getting myself enough involved. Also just not getting myself involved and not educating myself.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, for me, like your last point there, I agree with what you said throughout your whole
Rant.
trying to rant. Yeah, like you're trying to express yourself there. Like I haven't really done as much as I could to be involved in more, but like I haven't kept myself as informed as I should have. This podcast here being, you know, a good example is, talking about the Boone and Crocket Club. I just thought it was a list of names that have killed big animals, or something. And I've taken for granted the information that's out there. Not only do you become a better hunter through, it seems, learning now, a better hunter of understanding your quarry, but also a better hunter of understanding like the history of hunting, and even, the great opportunity that we do have, to go out. Like anyone listening to our podcast has the opportunity, or hope, create for themselves the opportunity to go out in the woods. You may not maybe not necessarily like to hunt, but just going out in the woods, like Theodore Roosevelt and starting the Boone and Crocket Club and all the parks and what else do you call them?
National Park Service, BLM, U.S. Fish and Game and Wildlife Service, U.S. Forest Service. The Boone and Crocket Club initiated all that. Also, the Boone and Crocket, all your national parks, Yellowstone.
Yeah.
For some reason, I can't think of the other parks. Yellowstone's the only one that's popping in my head, but Teddy Roosevelt was responsible for that. He saw problems there, and here's
he did that so that way we, 100 years later, we have that to pretty much enjoy almost as what it was like back then.
Yeah, and I mean, well, it wasn't just him too. I mean, that's one thing. He was like the most famous person with Boone and Crocket, but there was a list of people that obviously weren't as polarizing at the time, but cared just as much about conservation, the land itself, and so they all had efforts into protecting the land, the animals, and it's crazy. Like, so kind of educating myself. That's another thing, understanding that it's more than just the animal itself. It's the national parks, it's the vegetation, as we talked about, public lands, all of it. It's so complex. Like, we're kind of getting further into what I took notes on, because that was one thing that I was going to say was it's so complex and you got to really start immersing yourself into it. But that's kind of why we're doing this on the podcast is it's our way of sharing what we've learned. So Joe, it's kind of funny, but Joe found some information about Boone and Crocket through Randy Newberg, who's great and had the guys on there. And I was listening to the Meat Eater, and they recently had those guys on there, on the people that are president and top of the food chain for Boone and Crocket. And so we were both listening to those podcasts, and that's whenever I got with Joe, and I was like, hey, let's do our own little version and just talk about, like what we learn about them and what we find out about them. And so that inspired us to do this. But the thing is a lot of people just don't know about or we didn't. And we're kind of projecting, but we kind of projected a lot of other people. Like, everybody's heard of Boone and Crocket, but not everybody knows all the little fine details of what Boone and Crocket have accomplished over the years and what they're about today. And
well, and that's the one thing that I found was kind of interesting is they seem to do it like quietly, like you don't, I'm sure it's there if you look, but they're not like, big commercial things saying, hey, look what Boone and Crocket did to help with the pursuit of game management, or, like it's there, you can find it, but it's not overly advertised. And it, they do it quietly, and they do a pretty good job at it. And they've been around. So you said it was 1887.
Yeah.
So what we're 100 and
about 130 years.
130 years. That's quite a while for an organization to be around.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing what they've done. I mean, they've been responsible for, like I said, all the U.S. Forest Service, the Fish and Wildlife. They're responsible for starting all those, and then also responsible for the Pittman and Robertson Act, which takes the 11% taxes. I believe it's 11% taxes from gun sales and ammunition sales for conservation, which is since that was enacted. I want to say, I just saw a number the other day, like it's made like $2 billion. In a weird way, I'm like, that's a lot of money. But then in a weird way, I'm like, for all the people that buy ammunition and guns, that's all that it's made. So I don't know. I don't know if $2 billion is a lot, but I don't know that whenever I read that, it might have been just an estimate. Who knows? Maybe it's more now. I'm not even sure. That article could have been a couple years old. So obviously that number could be higher, but I thought that was kind of cool though. $2 billion is a lot of money that goes toward conservation.
No, for sure.
And, I think it's a 130-year test that we can all agree, right? I mean, when this stuff started, all of our wildlife was hurting. All of it. All of it was on its way to extinction.
Weren't you telling me about Teddy Roosevelt going on a buffalo hunt?
Yeah, so when Teddy Roosevelt was a kid, and I think this is whenever he started getting political power, this is more stuff that I got to read up on more and brush up on, because I'm talking a little bit outside my knowledge, but I'll recite the story the best I can. Teddy Roosevelt, as a younger man, before he was president, he went to the Midwest, I think in the Dakotas, if I remember the story right. And but even then, even before he was president, he knew that the wild buffalo, or American bison, whatever you want to call them, was on their way out. As far as they're on their way out to extinction. And I wish I would have wrote down the quote, because he made a quote about it that was kind of heartfelt or whatnot. But anyways, he went to the Dakotas because he was like, I want to do this. Like, he knew that they were going to be extinct soon. And he said, I want to do this before they become extinct. But it also, he went there, he got himself a buffalo, and that trip also, made him more energized, or what's the word I'm looking for? Like, he wanted to
motivated.
He wanted to do more for conservation. Teddy Roosevelt and the people that started Boone and Crocket kind of created the word conservation. Actually, I wrote that as a note too, that conservation, the definition at the time was a pretty simple term, just called prudent without waste, which basically I break that down as is the conservation is that you kill an animal not just for their hide, but you take everything that's edible, the hide, the horns. Obviously you probably leave the carcass behind, but you utilize the whole animal, not just a piece of the animal that has financial gains, is kind of how I break down conservation, and or at least that definition of conservation. But yeah, so the whole reason that we kind of also, or I mean, it wasn't the initial like idea, but the other thing with doing this is just learning that there's ways that we can all get involved. Like, I don't know exactly when, but I think maybe in the next year or so, like I'm going to look into trying to sign up to an organization and volunteer some time. Um, I think like you said, like what's one of your regrets? Well, one of them is just signing up to an organization. Some of us um, don't know that there's organizations to be signed up to, or, you know, and so we don't really ever go forward for it. Like you hear these organizations, but you kind of like Boone and Crocket. Oh, they score your horns. Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. Oh, they do stuff for conservation, but they mostly just want, donation money. And I mean, it's not a bad thing, but you can actually get involved with these organizations more so than just doing donation money or getting your horn scored. Like you can actually get involved in. So
True.
Yeah, I just think it's pretty cool, man.
No, it's way interesting too. Like it's one of those things like, oh wow, there's a whole nother topic that I can get into and study and learn a little bit more on that I didn't really know that was out there.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And I'm pretty excited about learning more about the history. And I think, yeah, I'm just more excited about learning about the history for sure. And I mean, I'm definitely not trying to make this a history class. I mean, I want it to be fun. It's a podcast. We're supposed to have fun and stuff, but it's cool. And like I said, I mean, I've kind of said it a couple times, but the whole point that we're trying to hit home here is like me and Joe didn't know a lot about Boone and Crocket. And then we started looking into it and we're like, oh my gosh. And so we kind of just wanted to share that with you guys, so you guys could be like, oh wow, there's a lot more that I can do as a fellow hunter than just buying my tag every year for conservation. Because that's the age old argument, right? Well, I hunt, I'm doing my conservation work, but at the same time, there's more we can all do as fellow hunters. And I think it's important, especially to a sport that I don't know if it's in trouble. I don't want to make any outlandish statements like that, but I mean, arguably, is it as popular as it used to be? I mean, I don't know, because sometimes you hear about record tag sales, but then you hear that the youth is that they have a hard time of getting the youth into hunting, and so it's kind of up and down, and hopefully through things like this podcast, I'm not saying that we're going to save the whole thing by any means, but through this podcast, we're doing our part of trying to get people into hunting. I mean, that's really why we started this, was to keep the hunting community strong, and contributing in our own minor, small way. I mean, or at least that was one of my ambitions. I don't want to speak for you, Joe, but
oh no, we're one and the same. Go ahead, Eric.
Okay, well,
tell me about my feelings.
So we've been a little bit upset lately. So a couple of things, I mean, this just that I wanted to throw out there was in 1906, the first museum of heads and horns was at the Bronx Zoo in Jersey, I believe, wherever. Anyway, what's that? In the Bronx? Yeah, it was in the Bronx. And then, but the cool thing about that was, so that's whenever a lot of efforts, like the people, started really work, like the public got more involved with conservation, was because having the heads and horns and the display out there, and like the people that came and visited the museum was able to kind of see the problem out there in the wildlife, if you will. And so, they started getting more involved in conservation. So that the Museum of Heads and Horns was pretty important for the conservation efforts of Boone and Crocket at the time. With that said, though, now today, that museum, I wish that I would have found an article or a reason why it moved, but it has moved over to the new Heads and Horns museum is in Cody, Wyoming, at the Buffalo Bill Historical Museum. So it's over in Wyoming now. But it's kind of funny that it went from New York, basically the New York area, to Wyoming. But that's where it is. So if you're ever in Cody, Wyoming, go check out the heads and horns of Boone and Crocket.
Boone and Crocket Club.
Yep.
And I thought too, I was going to look up, but not only did Teddy Roosevelt start the club, but he's also got his name in the club, in the list.
Yeah. Speaking of that, he's the only president ever to have their name in Boone and Crocket record books, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, that is kind of cool.
Oh, and there was a cougar that he has in the record books, or some would say mountain lion. And then the first edition of the record books, speaking of record books, was I believe printed in 1932 for the first time. And then that kind of leads into so I didn't have as much. There's actually a lot of information about Pope and Young, but I just kind of wanted to go over a few things about them too, which is really cool. So they're the same thing. I hate saying the same. They're pretty much the same thing as Boone and Crocket, but they're for the archery side of it, but they still do the same conservation efforts. And they were founded in 1961, January 27th of 1961. So they were about 80 years later. Well, give or take 70 years later after Boone and Crocket. But they were more for the archery side of scoring and conservation, though. They try to do, through their organization, they try to do conservation efforts also, just like Boone and Crocket does. And then I do have, just for one animal, for the elk, Pope and Young elk, to get in the record books there, you must score at least 260 for a typical set of horns, and a 335 for a non-typical. I don't know why that stuck out at me, but I figured I'd put it in my notes, so I did.
Probably because it's bigger than anything you've ever killed.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, I gotta get a 260 at least. Well, that's for archery, so I didn't actually see what the minimum was for Boone and Crocket, but yeah, so that was kind of the well, it wasn't kind of, it was the information that we found out about Boone and Crocket. Or is there any more that you have at this time?
No, that covers everything. It was interesting. Like I said, I was totally naive. I'll admit it. Like, I thought I was a cool hunter, like, thought it was all about horns, but it's more than that. And it's a little different. And I'm sure my eyes are going to get open a lot more wider as we continue down. It's going to be interesting to see what else I learn. I thought I knew, I'm not claiming I knew everything, but I guess I should say I had a decent understanding of everything. And it seems like I don't even have a decent understanding.
Yeah, definitely. I guess that's part of the Struggling Hunters podcast is we're pretty transparent. We're not afraid to, yeah, we get embarrassed and everything, but we're not afraid to put ourselves out there. That's kind of our thing is we're related to the average hunter, the average guy that goes hunting. And that's just our angle, because we're we love hunting. We love to do it all the time. But at the end of the day, we're average hunters. Eventually, I think we both have the desire to do more for conservation as as time goes on with this podcast. And even if this podcast doesn't last, I'm gonna increase my efforts. But as far as hunting also is increase our efforts on becoming better hunters and taking it more serious and doing what we can to be able to give back and teach other people what we've learned through our struggles.
True. Very true.
Yeah. So, I think that's it.
Well, and so I was going to say, I did put in for, I guess, one of the things that I put in for my doe tag. It closed yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, so I got in for that. And so I'll have that coming up. Getting ready for, again, the archery hunt coming up in August. I'm heading down this weekend to set up a trail camera or two, maybe. So hopefully, be posting some pictures of that coming up here shortly. And I'll admit I'm behind the 8 ball again. Not that it's kind of my own fault. For one, I just kind of, I guess with COVID hit and I didn't really go out and really start prepping as early as I wanted to, or I'm probably using that more of a crutch than is actually needed. But when, everything's starting to lift a little bit and I feel like I can actually go out without getting in trouble.
Yeah.
But, so, I'm still practicing the bow, getting the bow set up. Went out a couple nights or last week, I think it was, and tried to get my bow tuned up. Still not shooting as quite as great as I want to, but I think I had a couple issues on how I had my target. So to tune a bow, you set up a sheet of paper in front of your target and you pay attention. You can literally, so you watch the tear in the paper and it tells you the story of how your arrow is flying through the air. So, if it tells, so if this is the arrow and it goes out of the bow, it can fly, it can turn either way, go through the air, like come through the air like that, or tip up going through the air. So you put up you try to shoot through a sheet of paper of some type to see how the arrow is flying, and you can tell where the point hits and where the fletchings go through. And and then you make your adjustments to where the arrow is resting on your string. And then, then you can adjust how far out left to right, how your arrow is setting on the rest on the bow to help adjust that. And I screwed up, being that I don't have the cleanest or the greatest facility. It's just wherever I can go up on the mountain here and find a spot to shoot. My paper was setting kind of not straight on at me. It was kind of slanted a little bit. So as my arrow was flying, I think it wasn't hitting the paper straight on. So it wasn't giving me the true story of how the arrow was flying through the air.
Did you make any adjustments?
Yeah, I've made adjustments. I was making adjustments but at the end of the day, I was like, I couldn't quite get it settle in like how I wanted to. And as I got home and got thinking about it, because of how I was shooting on I was on a hill, kind of a decline, and it still wasn't level ground. So I had to set things up to make it stay up. It wasn't setting, straight on at me. So I think this weekend as I'm out setting up cameras, I'm doing scout, and I'm going to go back and do it again and see if I can get it to line up better.
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully you didn't adjust too much to where you're all screwed up now whenever you get the paper nice and straight and everything, and
yeah,
it might have been flying nice and straight from the beginning, but then because your paper was a little, is that kind of one of your running theories, or is that
Yeah,
something.
that's one of my running theories because, with that paper setting at a slight angle, I feel like, that the arrow can stay true how it is, but it's still going through the paper differently because it's tearing different because
Yeah.
of that angle.
Yeah,
But
it makes sense to me. So I get I'm picking up what you're putting down. So
all right, well, that's like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich then.
yeah, there you go. One last thing though for me is we me and my wife, we had our baby girl
Oh yeah,
just the other day. We didn't even bring it up. I know. So selfish.
I
But
know, right?
yeah, well,
For yourself.
so man, here I am talk about all this stuff. I don't even bring up my new baby girl. No, man, I'm actually really excited though. It's been good. She's healthy. She's
That's
such a
good.
good baby. Yeah, she's such a good baby. I'm so excited. So
How's
uh,
mom doing?
she's doing excellent. This is our second kid together, and this one, like everything was really really smooth, and she's doing really good. Everything is really good over at the Stewart household. So
Well, it
really excited.
must be doing. I'm excited for you. Must
Yeah.
be doing pretty good though too. If you're able to just a day and a half after being able to take a couple hours out of your evening and set up and do a podcast. So your wife deserves some more kudos.
Yeah, no, she does, man. She's been great. She's a tough lady, and she does a lot. And you know, I mean, even this podcast, man. Like, I mean, I'm not trying to get all emotional or anything, but like, she supports me in everything that I do, and it's great. And I mean, you have a great one over there in Utah too, because I mean, she obviously supports you in everything you do. So we're a couple lucky dudes that way.
True story.
Yeah, yeah. So, um, but yeah, so new baby girl, so really exciting. Everything's been kind of crazy around the house. The reason I brought that up though was I do plan on getting out, but yeah, it's been a little bit hectic and crazy, but I think I'm gonna try to do some scouting here soon. I don't know exactly when, but hopefully soon I'll get out scouting and and kind of get back to everything being normal, but been pretty preoccupied with the newborn. Even before the newborn, uh, it was still kind of trying to get everything ready for the newborn. Just all the stuff all the responsible stuff. Gotta being an adult sucks. All the responsibilities. So
Right. Give them that kid that's the greatest opportunity they can get here at life.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So now now I gotta prep her up for some hunting.
True. True.
Gonna start her young. I got my middle daughter, or my yeah. So I have my boy that lives with us, and our two daughters, and so our daughter is the middle one, and she I was asking her the other day. I said, "So you ready to go hunting?" Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. She doesn't even know what it's all about, but I was prepping her. She thinks she knows, but she has no idea. But the good news is though, she was ready to go though. She's like, "Yeah, I'll go." So I was like, "Cool."
The great thing though is with all the years that they have in front of them and the years we have in front of us, by the time they hit being old enough to hunt, hopefully we have this figured out that we can pass on a ton of knowledge to help their hunting situation better, that they're not striking out as much as we have.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely, man. I think you have an excellent point, and I mean that's what it's about. Is uh, that's something that I kind of forgot to talk about earlier. Well, I didn't really forget to talk about it, but one of the biggest reasons, one of my biggest motivators of doing this is that my grandkid or great grandkid, after I'm gone, basically, right? So they can like look back and go, what was that crazy old man like, and they can get on these podcasts and see a little bit of of me doing something. You know, I'm making some kind of history, and I mean that's kind of important for me. You know, that's what motivates me to do this. Is um, you know, it's not on a national level of history or anything. It's more for my family. It just, you know, they whatever the archive YouTube channel or something, and you know, look up us and see us sitting here doing this. And I mean, that's what's important to me, is they kind of get a understanding of where my mind was, and what I was about. And I don't know, it's just really important to me to do that, you know,
Yeah.
and and you know, have some kind of history. I mean, how cool would it have been if our grandpas left, you know, obviously they didn't have YouTube and podcasts back then, but you know, our grandpas wrote in their journal every day, and gave we could go back in their journals and see where their mind, like, you know, that's just really cool. And you know, I think a lot of people probably want to do it, but they don't. And I talked Joe into doing this podcast with me, and you know, is for my own selfish reasons, for things like that. And obviously we want to grow big and have a good podcast and do, you know, and have a follow, like all the stuff that comes with making content. Obviously we want that too, but one of my big motivators is just selfishly for me and my future family. So like I said, my great grandkids or my great grandkids can get online and look up me, look up,
Right.
you know, and
I'm sure they're going to be sitting somewhere in high school and sharing it at lunchtime with their buddies. Hey, check out this guy. He's my grandpa.
yeah, he's such a goofball. But I mean, you know, doesn't matter. I mean, the more we get immersed in conservation efforts and stuff, maybe they can you know, like you said, sit in high school and make a debate about something that we said 80 years prior, or whatever the time would be. You know, well, how cool would that be?
Yeah.
So I mean, that's what it's about, man. That's what this is about. That's what makes it so cool. And that's why, like, you know, anybody that thinks about doing a podcast or a YouTube channel or any kind of content, I mean, do it. You know, I mean, it's not, there's enough to go around, you know, there's enough people will support plenty of us. And so, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I'm just the type.
Everyone has a story, and
Yeah,
it can be shared and it can be appreciated.
exactly. And I mean, I just think that it's one of those things that, you know, I mean, I know on my side, anybody that comes to me and says, I'm doing a YouTube channel, I'm doing a podcast, I'm doing this or that, I mean, whatever it is, but they're doing something for themselves, and it means a lot to them. Like, I'm pretty positive toward them. I mean, you know, I give them my full support, even if I don't understand it or whatever. I give them my full support. I get you, and I encourage them. And so, like I said, I mean, with what the things that I'm saying, you know, there might be that one person out there that's listening to me and says, man, that sounds cool. You have an option at that point. You can either say that sounds cool, maybe one day, or you can say that sounds cool and I'm going to jump on and do something. You know, me and Joe, this Zoom thing, like, we took it as an opportunity. I mean, and I hope that's our story, even whenever we do grow bigger and we go back and say, you know, COVID-19 sucked, but we kind of made, you know, we made we made lemonade out of lemons, and we, you know, got on Zoom and made this podcast. And I don't know how we went to hear from me having a baby girl, but I'm just kind of speaking from the heart, you know. So
Yeah. You know, like you got a point there, you know, like we hope that with this podcast and what we're saying, that, you know, like if the legacy that we're leaving behind, you know, that, you know, for kids to come down the road, for posterity to watch back, and even, you know, people that to hop on to listen to us, that hopefully, you know, we leaving a positive message of you wanting to to learn more or to better yourself as a hunter, as a person. And, make sure you record that and, share that and leave it for someone else that might need to hear what you're going through or to learn from you.
Yeah. I have one thing to add about that, because I've thought about this, and me and Joe haven't talked about it, and I'm probably speaking for Joe just a tad bit here. But right now, I know what's going on in the world, and I've made if you want to know what's going on in the world, turn on CNN, Fox News, whatever you listen to. Fox News if you want the truth. Not biased, just saying. Here's what I'm trying to say, though. That was just a joke. But anybody listening, don't get offended. I'm just joking around, tongue in cheek around here. This is what I'm saying, though. And Joe, you can weigh in on this, but I thought about talking about it. But this podcast is me and Joe just trying to have fun. And I thought, obviously we don't have a huge following, but we have a little bit of a following. People listening to us maybe want to hear our opinions on what's going on in the world. What's going on in the world right now sucks. I'll put that as an opinion. But what I'm trying to – this podcast is about positivity. It's about an escape. I used to listen to sports all the time, ESPN, Fox Sports, all of it. I used to listen to it all the time. And the last 4 years or so, they bled politics into every angle of the sports. I can't listen. And that's me. That's my own personal thing. I'm not trying to influence anybody to do the same thing I'm doing. I'm just telling you what I've been going through the last 4 years. I can't listen to sports anymore. There's so much politics in sports. I'm like, man, the whole reason I watched sports was to get away from politics, was to get away from all the drama. I wanted to have fun. And that's what this podcast is about, is we're trying to do our best. We're trying to get better every podcast, but we're also trying to have fun. And so what's going on in the world today sucks. But I know for me, I'm not going to talk. This is our escape. And this is the last time I'll bring it up. And that's just my side of it. Joe, if you have anything on what's going on, I mean, I'm kind of ranting again, but it was on my mind, and I just wanted to kind of say something.
I'll second what you said. There's a lot of crappy stuff going on right now, and it's a lot of it's not totally. I don't totally agree with everything. I do know, maybe some changes needed, but again, we're lucky to live in America where we have the freedoms that we have, and people have fought to give them to us, and I know, and everyone has a right to do what they're wanting to do. That's cool, but I'll just say I'm glad we live in America, and I know that it's I believe it's going to come out okay. Everything's sucky, but at the end of the day, we're lucky to have the freedoms we do, and I believe that through God and through our beliefs and freedom that things will come out, and we'll be good.
Yeah, hopefully we figure out a way to unite again and be America. I think that's important. I think we've all lost track of just being American, being one, being United States of America. But that's, I mean, I don't know. We all got to want to change, and I know that there's a lot of things that need to be changed. But I don't know. I'm at a loss for words with it. Like I have my political beliefs. I have my political thoughts, but I'm not that political of a person. In private conversation, I have political conversations and I share my opinion that way, but on the platform, that's not what this is about. If we wanted to do that, this would be called the struggling politicians, not the struggling hunters. And this is our escape. This hunting podcast is our escape from that outside stuff. So with that said, after this one, especially, this podcast, this portion of the podcast is definitely taking a turn on its own. Wasn't planned at all. But after this podcast, like, just so you know, I'm sure we might have to say it again down the road, but like, we're we're not getting into that. This is for people to be able to escape and go, the world is crazy, but you know what? We're going to listen to Eric and Joe's history lessons that they learned this week. And, you know, and laugh a little bit. That's really what we want to get. You know, that's what we want to do. That's what I want to do. And I'm not trying to talk for Joe, but I think he feels the same way. And so that's really all I got.
Joe, yeah, no, I'm think I'm done for the night, ready to go to bed. But you know, again, in closing, thanks again for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. This episode's been fun. The previous episodes have been fun. It's been fun getting on and watching the analytics, seeing you guys watching, and you know, I appreciate it. Hopefully, you guys do too. You know, please hit a like, share, comment, whatever. You know, I like the interaction, and hopefully, you guys give us some.
Yeah, you guys watching on YouTube, this portion, or whenever you guys comment, like, we try to get back to you. Also leave some questions. Again, thank you, Mike, for giving me that question. I hope I answered it to your liking. If not, the next time I see you, then I'm sure you'll tell me all about it. But with that said, leave some comments. You know, if you have questions, we'll try to save them for a podcast, do a little bit of research, and try to give you the best answer we can, you know. With that said, I'm done. Thank you guys for listening to the Struggling Hunters. It's been fun, and we'll see you at episode 11.
Catch you on the flippity flip.
Oh.